In this session, we'll look at how to set up and optimize a layout template for your construction documents. What are the best options when sending a plan, elevation, or other view to the layout? And finally, how to place 3D views on a layout. Let's begin with an overview of the workflow process in Chief Architect. There are two main file types in Chief Architect: a plan file and a layout file. The plan file is where you do your design work, floor plans, elevations, and sections. These are typically managed using the built-in Save Plan views, which is a combination of layer sets and default sets. You send these views to a layout file. Think of the layout file as an organization for your construction drawings that are scaled. In your plan file is a CAD detail container. You can think of this as a separate space to create your details and schedules. These CAD details can be sent to the layout just like a floor plan or elevation, and is a good way to avoid clutter in your projects. Plan and layout files are linked. Anytime there are changes in the plan file, it will be updated in the layout file. However, you may need to refresh these views if you're using a plot line, elevation, or section view on the layout. Since these two files are linked, it is a good practice to keep both of them in the same folder. Let's go into the program and begin by looking at templates that are used for layouts. In the program, when you begin with a brand new layout here in the Startup dialog, the program is going to open up the template layout you've selected. Now, you may be using Chief Architect Premier, you may be using Chief Architect Interiors, and when you first started the program, may have been a while ago, we typically would ask, are you doing a residential design or are you doing an interior kitchen and bath design? And that typically will define the layout template you are loading. In this case, I've opened up a 24 by 36 template layout included with the program. Let's take a look at where the different template layouts are in the program and what you can choose from. Let's go up into our File menu, underneath Templates, and let's do a new layout from Template. The program will open up a dialog that is usually in the current version. I'm using 13 for this video, X13, and it's looking in the template folder for that version. There's a few different layout templates. The one that I currently have open is the Architectural D 24 by 36. There are a few other ones. If you were using the kitchen and bath template, it would open up an 11 by 17 tabloid version of this layout. And then you're going to notice that there is a metric version of that same layout. The M at the end of bath over here indicates there's metric. There are other layout templates. If you go to the layout borders, you'll see a couple of folders, Imperial and Metric. Underneath the Imperial, there is a architectural B, C, and D layout that you can open up and you can see what these look like. If we open up the B layout here, notice that I have a new tab here, and this is the layout template. It looks very similar to the other one, and a lot of people typically ask, well, what size is the paper? If you come underneath your File menu system down to Print and Drawing Sheet Setup, you'll see this particular layout is using a 12-inch by 18-inch sheet of paper. I'm going to go ahead and close this smaller layout sheet that we have open, and let's just confirm that the initial layout that I opened previously is 24 by 36. I'm going to come down, look at the Drawing Sheet Setup, and just to confirm, that's exactly what I have open in this particular situation. Now this layout I can start sending views to. Notice that I'm on page 1 in here. If we go to page 2, typically will be blank in the layout, and if we go back to page 0, this is considered the master sheet inside of your layout. Anything on sheet 0 will show up on all subsequent pages. If we zoom in over here on the title block, you can see that there is a revision table. That means on every single sheet, page 1, page 2, as we page through these items over here, you're going to see this revision table because it's on page 0, considered the master sheet. If I go back to page 0 and we come down here into the title block down here, and let's go ahead and use our text tool. Specifically, let's use our rich text tool. I'm going to click in here and I'm going to give it the name of the plan. So we'll just call this the Layout Webinar Plan. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, slide it in over here, and then I'm going to adjust the font. Let's go back, double click on that. I'm going to highlight the text, and I'm going to come in here and set this to be at least 1/4 inch and see if that looks a little bit better. Reposition it. This is now the title of my plan, and when we go forward on page 1, page 2, you'll see that that text will show up on every single page. The next thing I want to do to customize this layout template is to put my logo in here. Let's go ahead and slide down to the other end of the layout. And remember, we want to be on page 0 because I want to have this logo provided on every single page. So I'm going to go back to page 0. Again, this is the master sheet. I'm going to slide over a folder that I have my logos in. You can see a number of logos here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of them and I'm just going to drag it over into the layout. This will come in at whatever scale and zoom factor we're at. I'm going to click on this and I'm just going to resize this by quite a bit, and then let's use the rotate handle. Let's pull it around until it's at about 90 degrees, and I'm just going to slide this up in the title block, and now I have that particular logo. Now as you go back and you look at some of my other logos, some of these are quite a bit larger and has my company name in there. You can do the same thing in pulling that in and rescaling it. When you pull your logo in, one of the things that I like to do for images that are on a layout sheet, let's just double click and open this up. When you go into the picture box dialog, there's an option to save this in your plan. Currently this is a JPEG image if you look at the end of my file type. So I'm going to switch the image type to JPEG, and I also like to increase the quality of that to 100%. If I delete my logo or move my logo, then this is embedded inside of my template file and I won't worry about that being a broken link. There are other items in the title block here that you may choose to change around. Notice that the sheet, the scale, the date, this is a dynamic date field. It's currently using the current date. I'm usually not necessarily a fan of using this. So if you take a look at this macro by double clicking on it, you can see that inside of the text box here is the date macro code. If you drop down, you'll see a number of macros in here that we can use. Currently it's using the time and date. I prefer to just change this to the word date. In my template plan, that's a reminder that I need to put something in here. And then when I open up the new plan, if I want the date in here, usually it's going to be the current date or the rev number of the plan. Then what I can do is explicitly come in here and put the date that I want in here, and I'm just going to call it January 2021. Then that's not changing on me every time I open up this layout sheet, because I like to be specific in dating my documents. The title block is nothing more than text, and in this case rectangular boxes. If we click on this rectangular box down here, you can see that it's a highlight, it's a rectangular box. If you want to remove some of these items, you can simply click on these and just delete them. If I come in here and delete some of these items, we can remove any of these elements in here and just simply remove it all together. I may want this to be a little bit longer, and I'm going to skip putting the date in there. This is a rectangle. You can use the rectangle in here. There may be cases where you want to take the edge off of the corner of the box, maybe put a nice radius on here. Tap on the box, use the fillet tool, come down in the lower edit menu here, click on the fillet tool. Let's make sure that we set a radius in here. I currently have that set to be 1/4 inch. Next to the fillet tool is the fillet all corners. that will then apply that fillet amount to each one of those. So if I want to make that somewhat of a standard, I can click on the existing box in my title block, use that fillet tool, it's already set to 1/4 inch, fillet all, then I can easily apply that fillet to all of the borders in the same way if I like that fillet amount. So each one of these elements inside of your title block can be customized specifically for the look that you're after. When you're finished customizing your layout template, you can save this as your own template, and this is a one-time operation. You always want to maybe go back in and make some adjustments. And then you can save this as your layout template. You can find this option underneath the templates, and you're going to want to save this as a template. Now when you save this as a template, notice what we have checked on and off inside the Save as Template. CAD details, that may be a detail you've drawn. You may want to choose to leave that inside of your layout template. I'm going to show you mine here in a minute. I do leave a number of details in there. I make sure that's unchecked, and then for the non-template data, CAD, which is the boxes that we were just looking at in the border, the tables, such as the revision table, and then I use a page table for an index of all the drawings, and then text, such as the title of the plan or any other text that you may have there. And then in the very bottom of this dialog is to set this as your default template for future projects when you start a new layout. Let's go ahead and use that and see what the program does, asking us to save this. In the save operation, it's typically going to save this in the version of the program you're using underneath your template folder. That's a good location to save it. And then we can come in here and give it a name. And I'm just going to call it the webinar template. And then once that's saved as a template, you're going to notice that a brand new window opened up, layout template, untitled 4, it's not saved, and it has any information that you have. And currently it opened it up to page 0. Typically I might save this at the time on page 1, and then when I begin my work, it's opened up on the most frequent page that I use inside the layout. For your layouts, one of the things that I like to do in my process is to have a page for every typical layout sheet that I might have, and then I just kind of go through and fill in the blanks. Let me open up an example of my layout template, and let's walk through this a little bit. As you see here on the screen, this is a completed sample plan that I've done for the Bachelor view you can download on the website. And in this case, there are 22 pages inside of this collection of construction drawings. As we kind of move forward and take a look at the template plan that I use, you're going to notice that I have 20 pages in here. And as I go through each project slightly different, I may add or remove a few pages. But as I go through this, I'm basically going through and adding a floor plan into the floor plan page. I'm going through and adding the elevation views into each page. And I have all of the text and boilerplate already built in my template plan, and I'm just filling it out. Obviously there is some customization for each client as you have that, but it's an easy process. I'm going to open up my template plan, and I've also made this available if you'd like to download it from the website. There's a variation of this that's 24 by 36 as well as 11 by 17. Let me open this up and let's take a look. In my layout template, notice that it opened up to page 1. You notice the indicator up here is on page 1. Also, I have the page number 1. This is a text macro, and it's on every single page. If you move to page 2, it will update to page 2. If you go back to the master sheet on page 0, let me take a look and show you what I have for the page number using the macro. When you look at this text, inside of here is a macro %page. You can access these macros underneath the macro information. Under global, there's an area called layout info. The first entry is the %page for the layout page number. As you move through the layout and go through each page, that macro will increment for your pages. Now let's take a look at one more item. As long as we're on page 0, and you take a look at the default page template text that I have right in the center here. Let's open up this one. Come in here, and I have another macro in here for the layout title. If you kind of just slide over into my project browser, you'll see that the 21 pages that I have each have a name on here, project summary, all the way down through the kitchen plan and elevations. I go into the project browser and name those, and then using this text macro, it will pull that title into the title block. I don't have to type the text in a couple of times to have that show up on my layout sheet. The way to apply that data for each of your pages, come over to the page, right-click on it, come down to Edit Page Information. This opens up the layout page specification. In the label, I've used the macro for the page number. That's what applies the page information over here in the project browser next to the number 1. That macro, the # is your page number. The title, project summary, you see that show up over here. It also shows up in your index table. You can easily change these different pages by using the drop down, coming in here and making the adjustments as you see fit. Once you've done all of these pages, this is kind of a one-time thing for your template plan. Let's go back over onto page 1 and let's take a look at this. So project summary is showing up on page 1. You see that over here in my project browser. And then if we zoom down into where I have my index of drawings, all of this information is being populated through this table. How do you get this table in the plan or in the layout? You'll find that underneath your tools, layout, and it's actually called the layout page table. When you place this, it comes in quite large, and then you can open it up and modify this table. Just double click on it. You can go through, change the text style, and then go in and grab each one of the attributes that you want to remove the borders, and then you can move and maybe even relabel some of these until you customize it. And what I've done in my case is I've made it much smaller, and if I decide that I don't need one of these drawings, let's say I don't need the ceiling plan, it's on page 8, I come over, I'll right click on it, delete the page. When that's removed out of the plan, notice that I now have a new page 8, and it automatically renumbers it just like an index of drawings should. And my layout template has all the typical pages that I want in my construction drawings organized in the way that I want. You're going to notice that I also have text in here. See that I have a rendering for illustration only. Maybe I need that, maybe I don't. If you look at the completed page 1 that I have here, you can see that I've used that text. If it's not needed, I'll simply remove it. Let's begin the process by going to the floor plan page on page 5. And let's zoom out just a little bit. And what I want to do is open up a plan and send out the floor plan. Let's talk about how to put labels on there and text associated with it. You're going to notice that I already have some text in here. I've opened up one of the sample plans we're working on in X13, and I want to place this on my layout sheet. This is a floor plan that has all of my dimensions and elevation cameras in here. Underneath my file menu, I'm going to come down and go send to layout. When you send a floor plan to layout, really the main options that you have are the page number. This is the default page number that I'm on, page 5. The send options, send entire plan view, anything that's on your screen. The current screen, which would be kind of your zoom factor. Current screen as an image is more of a screen capture. If you add a door or window or remove one, it will not update. It's only a screen capture. And then this is a linked save plan view. Currently I'm using save plan views. This is the floor plan view that I'm using. It controls my layer sets and my defaults. You can learn more about that in other videos we have. And then at the very bottom down here is the scaling factor. And I'm going to deliberately send this at a larger scale. Let's send it at 3/8. That will overfill our layout sheet most likely. When I send this out to the layout, you'll notice as we zoom out that the 3/8 inch scale is obviously not going to fit on this sheet of paper. You can always rescale a view after you've sent it out to layout, tap on it, And in the lower edit menu is a little ruler indicator where you can rescale this view. And as I go up here and I just change this to 1/4 inch, that way I don't need to resend the layout sheet or the elevation view at a different scale if I decide that it needs to change. Rescaling it is a quick way to do it. Now when you send a view out to the layout, this is a crop box. If you tap on it, you can simply come in here and crop off certain things. I have an extra elevation camera out on the right. If you zoom in, you can see it down here on the bottom as well. I don't want to see this camera call out, so I'm going to pull this up. Now this crop box can be shaped as well. There may be situations where maybe you have an L-shaped bedroom or something and you need to reshape it. You can tap on this box, and let's zoom out a little bit. I'm going to use the break tool, number 3 on my keyboard. You'll also find it in the lower edit menu. And I put a break in here. Notice that the red indicator in here and the extra diamond that I have right here, I can actually break this and crop out certain views, maybe a hallway or something that I don't want to see, and you can reshape this. You can also do it at an angle and reshape that. I'm going to press undo here a couple of times. Let me slide this up a little bit towards the top of the page. I'm going to crop it down a little bit. One of the things that I like to do is I like to control the text for my floor plan. Let's slide that up just a little bit more and zoom in. So you see how my floor plan text says first floor 1/4 inch scale. This is formatted in a certain way that I like to see it. There is an option where you can do this automatically, and I've turned that layer off. If you just tap on the viewport for this layout and we come over into the side of my active layer display, notice that I have the layer for the boundary box turned off as well as the label box turned off. If I turn this on and make this my default, you can see that here it is down here. It has the word floor plan in there, and I can control the text style of that to the best that I can. By clicking the define button, I can come in here and edit it. What I can't do is I can't underline it. Let's go ahead and press escape here. I can't underline it, and also notice my scale in here. Let's go ahead and open up this layout box, and I can actually force the scale in here. If we come into the label and we specify the label, currently it's using the floor plan. And if I come over, again, use the macro, drop this down, and I'll come over to the object specific, there is the option for the scale for that box. And you can see that currently it says floor plan, %box scale, and there we have that format. So anytime I rescale this, it will automatically update. I like to be a little more precise with my formatting. That's why I leave this text inside of my template plan. Just tap on that, turn off that label so that it then disappears. So just depends on what your preference is and how you want the look. I have to change this. If I rescale this at 3/8 of an inch, I do need to change that myself. And so it does leave me a little bit more vulnerable in making changes. So a few more changes. I have my wall legend that I typically will send out my wall legend down here. This is text. If you don't need it, just delete it. My floor plan notes, again, this is just a text box that I leave in here. And then my overview rendering that I typically send my 3D view at, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. In the project browser, the next thing I want to do is talk about elevations and sending section views and elevations. Let's go to that page. Again, this is a blank page for my front elevations, and let's go back over into the floor plan and generate that view. From my floor plan view, I'm going to come down and I'm going to open up my elevation camera. From the elevation view, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to send this out to the layout sheet, come down, send a layout, and again, the default page number was the one we were on. You can always change that. Entire view is fine. And then there's a few different items that you can change for your elevation or cross-section cameras that are different from the floor plan. They are the live view versus plot lines. You can think of your floor plan view as plot lines. For the live view, these are cameras that we offer: watercolor, glasshouse view. The screen up behind this dialog is a vector view. And then underneath of this is Update on Demand, which means if you make changes to it, you need to force a refresh. If you move a window or change a sun shadow, you'll need to force the update. Update always, a little more expensive, but not too terribly. We'll do that automatically for you. Plot lines is going to give you a little crisper line weight. If that's important to you, you can use plot lines. Plot lines will send it out as a black and white. And then there is the option to use color fill if you want to fill that in for your view. So you might try the difference between live view and plot lines. Remember, plot lines also, you will need to refresh the view if you make a change such as adding or moving a window. Let's go ahead and send this out as a color plotline view out to sheet number 3. Once this is on the sheet, you can simply click on it, reposition it wherever you need to on the sheet. Again, notice that I have some default text in here, front elevation. This is because I like to control the text as opposed to using the automatic text, and then I can control the font, the underline, and the scale. As I mentioned, with the plot lines, you will need to refresh the view. Also with your live view that's Update on Demand, you will need to make those changes. If we double click, this will open up the elevation camera. And if I come in here and make a change, let's assume that I delete this window. Let's go back over into the layout view, and you'll notice the window has not been removed in the view. Now there's a couple of things you can force this to update. When you're in the elevation camera and you close it, the program is going to prompt you to update the view. This is typically the easiest way to keep your views updated. Let's assume in this case that I say no, don't update it. There is also a refresh inside of the layout. Tap on the view, and in the lower edit menu, you're going to see a refresh or update view option. When you update the view, of course, this takes a minute to update. Plot lines do take longer than the live views, but eventually this updates, and you can see now the window has been removed. If you have many elevation or section views that need updated, you'll find a tool up in the upper menu to update layout views. And with this tool, you can force all views to be updated, or all live views, or just all plotline views to keep your plan and layout completely updated. In the next section, let's talk about sending a 3D view to your layout or placing a 3D view on your layout. You can see in this bath suite plan that I have in the upper left-hand corner the 3D rendering for the project. What's the best way to get this on your layout sheet? I'm going to go down in the layout template. Let's go down to the bath suite page, and you can see the template that I have set up for this. Back over into the floor plan. I'll switch the plan view to my camera's view, which will also change my layer set. This looks a little busy, but I've got my saved camera for the bath. Let's just double click, open it up. From your 3D view, you can now send this directly out to your layout. Under the File menu, come down to Send a Layout. Notice that the scale information is blocked out. Since there's no relative scale to the perspective drawing, we'll go ahead and send this out to the layout sheet. Once it's on the layout sheet, then I'll kind of position it. I'll slide that up into the upper corner. And if you hold the letter X down on your keyboard, you can easily resize this concentrically. Go ahead and slide it up, and that's how you can get a 3D view on your layout sheet. Now, what about some cameras such as the ray trace view that you can't send directly out to the layout? Just as I brought my logo in earlier in the session, I can do the exact same thing. If I slide over my collection of some of my renders, I'll grab the bath suite, pull it into the layout. Once it's on the layout sheet, we'll simply resize this quite a bit smaller, pull it down, and what I like to do in this case, go ahead and double click on it. I like to make sure that I'm using, in this case, notice it's a JPEG image. Mark that saved in plan at 100%, and that way it will be preserved with this layout sheet. Now, as I wrap up this session, one final thing that comes up oftentimes is what if you need to do two different sizes of your layout. Notice in my title block that I have my scale set that it's 24 by 36. That means if I take this layout sheet as we fill the screen and I print it as a PDF, I'll have that PDF and I can easily print this at 11 by 17. In doing so, that will then negate the scale. However, since I have this disclaimer in my title block, that way hopefully I have all the dimensions that I need on my plan and I don't have any of the crafts or tradespeople pulling out a slide rule on the job site. So I've just simply put that on page 0 on my plan. If I tap on this and look at my title block, you can see that that's right in my title block on page 0. That way it will show up on all of my layout sheets. Well, that wraps up this session on layout and construction documents. Thanks for watching.